Imagine for a moment that every glacier on Earth melted overnight. It sounds like something from a disaster movie, but if it happened, the consequences would be profound, reshaping the planet and impacting life everywhere. Today, we're taking a deep dive into this apocalyptic scenario to uncover what Earth would look like and how it would impact every one of us. 1. The catastrophic rise of sea levels. Our journey starts with one of the most immediate consequences: sea level rise. Glaciers hold enough water to raise global sea levels by an estimated 200 feet, or about 60 meters. That's enough to flood nearly every coastal city around the world, turning today's bustling metropolises into submerged ghost towns. Imagine cities like New York, Miami, and London completely underwater, their skylines submerged, with just the tallest skyscrapers peeking out. Coastal countries such as the Netherlands and Bangladesh would cease to exist entirely. And this isn't just a few cities. We're talking about displacing around 2.4 billion people, almost a third of the world's population. People would be forced to migrate to higher ground, sparking a global humanitarian crisis on a scale we've never seen before. Billions of people would need new homes, sparking conflicts over land and resources as entire nations scramble to accommodate these climate refugees. Economies would buckle under the strain of trying to provide shelter, food, water, and healthcare to displaced populations. This mass migration could alter political borders, creating intense competition for resources, and likely leading to the rise of new conflicts over fresh water, arable land, and even simple living space. 2. Redrawing the world map and creating a new ocean landscape. Next, we'd see Earth's geography change dramatically as new coastlines emerge. Low-lying countries would disappear, but in mountainous regions, new coastlines could appear as the sea fills valleys and rises up mountainsides. It's possible that some mountain ranges would become isolated islands. This global restructuring would likely result in new trade routes, with access to resources, like natural gas or oil reserves, shifting dramatically. New navigable waters might be created, while previously accessible resources could be submerged and lost forever. This sudden shift would ripple across the global economy, changing everything from shipping routes to access to essential natural resources. 3. Altered weather patterns and intensified climate change. Glaciers aren't just frozen rivers, they're climate stabilizers. The ice cover reflects sunlight, regulating Earth's temperature. Without glaciers, Earth would absorb more solar heat, amplifying global warming. This change would trigger a vicious cycle, where warming accelerates faster than ever before, destabilizing weather patterns worldwide. Weather would become unpredictable and extreme. Summers would become unbearably hot in many regions, and winter storms would grow stronger as warm air meets remaining cold fronts. Entire weather systems would shift. Countries that typically experience mild weather might face extreme heat, while areas already prone to hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes could see these natural disasters become far more frequent and intense. These changes would make it nearly impossible for many farmers to grow traditional crops, leading to global food shortages. Staple crops like wheat, corn, and rice are sensitive to temperature and rainfall. With unpredictable seasons, farmers would struggle to adapt, leading to skyrocketing food prices and possibly even famine in some parts of the world. 4. Global freshwater shortages. Glaciers are essential reservoirs of fresh water, providing a steady supply to rivers, lakes, and communities. With them gone, our freshwater sources would be drastically limited, affecting billions of people, particularly in regions like South Asia, South America, and the western United States. Imagine the Ganges River, fed by Himalayan glaciers, running dry during summer when water demand is highest. For millions in India and neighboring countries, this river is essential for agriculture, drinking water, and sanitation. Entire water systems would collapse, and areas already struggling with water scarcity would reach breaking points. Governments would have to implement extreme water rationing, prioritizing essential services and agriculture. Fights over water rights could emerge, and we'd likely see conflicts arise over this diminishing resource. 5. Oceanic disruptions and marine life crisis. Glacial melt would also disrupt ocean currents and ecosystems. Ocean currents, such as the Gulf Stream, help regulate global temperatures by redistributing heat. A sudden influx of fresh water would alter ocean salinity, slowing, or even halting some of these currents. Marine species depend on stable water temperatures and salinity to survive. With currents altered, many fish species would migrate to different areas, affecting entire marine food webs. Coral reefs, already sensitive to temperature changes, would face an extinction-level event due to both rising temperatures and increased fresh water. Fisheries that supply food to billions worldwide would collapse, creating massive food shortages and economic distress. 6. Impact on biodiversity and ecosystems. Worldwide, entire ecosystems depend on the seasonal melt of glaciers for a steady water supply. As glaciers vanish, rivers that feed forests, grasslands, and wetlands would dry up, leaving plants and animals without a reliable water source. Species that have evolved to depend on glacier-fed rivers would be hardest hit. Aquatic species, freshwater plants, and animals that rely on these habitats would face extinction. The resulting biodiversity loss would leave ecosystems vulnerable to diseases and disrupt pollination, which is vital for many crops and wild plants. The disappearance of glaciers would mark a devastating blow to ecosystems across the globe. 7. Long-term environmental impact and the loss of natural history. Beyond the immediate changes, the loss of glaciers means we're also losing an essential part of our planet's natural history. Glaciers hold ancient atmospheric records, preserving information about Earth's climate for thousands of years. With them gone, we lose these natural archives forever. Without glaciers, our ability to study past climate patterns diminishes. This knowledge is crucial for predicting future climate trends and understanding Earth's natural climate rhythms. In their absence, we're left with a gap in knowledge that could hinder our ability to respond effectively to future climate challenges. Earth's equilibrium would take centuries, perhaps even millennia, to stabilize. We'd be facing a world reshaped both physically and ecologically, a lasting testament to the power of glacial ice. 8. The loss of indigenous and local cultures. Glaciers hold deep cultural significance for many indigenous and local communities around the world. For generations, these communities have not only relied on glaciers for their resources, but have also woven them into their cultural identities, myths, and spiritual beliefs. For example, the Quechua people in the Andes view glaciers as sacred guardians of water and life. The Sherpas of the Himalayas regard mountains and glaciers as spiritual beings. If glaciers vanished overnight, these cultural connections and ways of life would face devastation. Generations-old traditions, storytelling, and rituals tied to glaciers would risk fading into history. Indigenous communities would lose their connection to landscapes they've stewarded for thousands of years, leading to a profound sense of cultural loss. 9. Altered geological activity and potentially triggered earthquakes. Believe it or not, glaciers also play a role in stabilizing the ground beneath them. As massive weights pressing down on tectonic plates, glaciers help prevent tectonic activity. If they melted instantly, the release of pressure could trigger earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and even landslides in glacial regions. Regions like Alaska, Greenland, and the Andes, where glaciers rest on active fault lines, would be especially vulnerable. The sudden loss of glacial weight could shift tectonic plates, causing earthquakes and activating dormant volcanoes. This would spell disaster for nearby communities and create new challenges for emergency responders, who might already be dealing with flooding and other glacier-related impacts. 10. Effects on global economy and infrastructure. Finally, we'd see tremendous disruptions to the global economy and infrastructure. Beyond the cost of managing rising seas and relocating people, critical industries from agriculture to energy would face unprecedented challenges. Coastal infrastructure like ports, oil refineries, and factories would be inundated, displacing millions of jobs and assets. Shipping, which is the backbone of global trade, would face enormous logistical challenges as new coastlines shift and familiar ports go underwater. Power plants near coastlines could also face closure due to flooding, limiting energy availability. Rebuilding infrastructure for displaced populations, creating new agricultural systems, and restoring transportation networks would strain national budgets and international economies, potentially leading to a long-lasting global recession. The global economy, as we know it, would have to adapt rapidly to survive this scenario. The consequences would ripple through every industry, impacting employment, access to resources, and the daily lives of billions worldwide. The disappearance of glaciers may seem like an extreme thought, but as we've seen, the consequences would be profound and far-reaching. Glaciers are more than just ice. They're vital pieces of Earth's climate puzzle, critical reservoirs of life-giving water, and witnesses to our planet's history. Let this possibility be a call to action to protect the remaining glaciers, not just for ourselves, but for the generations that follow.